My name is Anas Benadi. I'm the director of Delaware State Housing Authority. I want to first welcome you and thank you for joining us in this workshop for the Downtown Development District. So before I tell you a little bit about the agenda, I wanted to give you a little background about the Downtown Development District. So the DDD, as we refer to it, we like to create acronyms for everything at the government level. So the DDD is really an initiative or partnership here in the City of Wilmington between the state at different levels and the City of Wilmington at different levels. And the objective is to revitalize the downtown district, which is a good chunk of the downtown area here in the city. So just a little background, the Downtown District Initiative was announced by the governor, by Governor Markell during his State of the State address last year. That initiative was translated to a bill which passed the states and the House, the State House and Senate in a unanimous way, and was signed to law this past summer. And what the bill really does is pave the way for local jurisdiction to select an area of their downtown and apply for the designation at the state level. And what happened last fall is that the State Planning Office, with the assistance from DSHA, the Housing Authority, DDO, and other state agencies, put out an application process for the designation. And at the state level, we received 9 applications from the City of Wilmington all the way down to Seaford and a few towns and jurisdictions in between. And last January, the governor designated the 3 districts, which are the City of Wilmington, Dover, and Seaford. So these districts have access to a menu of incentives at the state level and the city level. And chief among them is the grant, the DDD grants. And that's the piece that's managed by the Delaware State Housing Authority. We were lucky enough last year to be awarded $7 million that will be put to work for this program, the DDD grants. And Karen Horton will talk a little bit more about that. So if you are a businessman, businesswoman, individual, organization that's operating within this district, if you have a project that's in progress right now, and or have a project that you are planning to start within the next 12 months, you should really look at the application process, talk to some of the folks who will be speaking today, because you have access to some meaningful incentives. Incentives like getting back 20% of your investment on the capital side as a grant, not a tax credit, not something that you will recover within the next 10 years. Now, this is investing, calculating what 20% of that, up to 20% will be, putting the application, and getting the check when you're done with the project. So if it doesn't get any meaningful than that, I don't know what that will do. And I wanted just to thank our partners at the city for not just crafting a plan and a vision, but for being here with us today. We have folks from the economic development, from planning, from housing, and other divisions within the city. So our speakers today, just to give you a little background here, the first speaker we will have is Lenny Safran. He's the director of the Department of Planning and Development within the city. Lenny will talk about the DDD plan, how it was customized for this area and submitted to the state. And also we'll touch on some of the incentives that are offered by the city. Karen Horton, as I said, is our principal planner with Delaware State Housing Authority, and she will talk specifically about the DDD grant, the 20% incentive that I mentioned. We have John Larvey from the Historical and Cultural Affairs. She will talk about another incentive at the state level, which is a set aside of 30%. How much, Sean, was it? $3 million? 1.5. I doubled that. 1.5 million of historic tax credit specifically for these areas, for the downtown district. We also have Carrie and Tony with us from the Delaware Sustainable Energy Utility, and they will be speaking to additional incentives and grants that they offer within the Delaware Sustainable Energy Utility. So again, stick around. Karen just informed me to share with you that we will have the speakers and we will have about 5 minutes for questions after each speaker. If we have additional questions that are not covered within that 5 minutes, we will move them to the end. So we want to cover as many questions as possible, but also we want to give time to all our speakers so we're not shortchanging anybody. Before we get to our speaker, Lenny Safran, I want to invite Cleon Colley, who is the Mayor Chief of Staff from the City of Wilmington, who has been a personal friend and partner and would like to share some comments on behalf of the city and Mayor Williams. Cleon?
Thank you, my friend. How's everybody doing? Good, good. I know it's after lunch, but we should be excited because we're talking about money. And there's nothing better to talk about. Honestly, whenever someone brings you up to speak, you got to figure out what your role is. So, you know, I'm in between Anas and Lenny, and I'm not going to go into the details of the DDD because as I get off the stage, Lenny would trip me because I would spoil his thunder. I'm here to make sure that everyone is excited about what is occurring. To thank our friends, Anas, DSHA, to thank my employees throughout the city for all the hard work they're done, and to thank you for being a part of it. I can't tell you over this weekend, the texts and the emails and this week, and with the snowstorm, wondering whether this was going to occur or not. I swear to you, I think that Anas or Lenny probably owes some of my folks in Public Works some money for getting the streets clean to make this happen. But we're all incredibly, incredibly excited about it. The mayor wanted to make sure I came down here and just let you know how enthused we are. And I had a couple of songs that Lenny wouldn't, there's no way he would let me play to get us motivated about making this cash, or getting this cash. But I'm sure, like I love my friends in Seaford and I love my friends in Dover, but I'm sure the applications coming out of here are going to just be stellar, and we're looking forward to it. So, Lenny, unless Anas is going to transition you, let's show us how we get it done. Thank you all. Good enough. That works. Can you hear me? Very good. Well, welcome everybody. Really, welcome to Wilmington. I'm going to give you a little bit of a very brief history of how the Downtown Development District came about to be in the shape that it is. And let's see here. I assume up and down arrow. Oh, there we go. Are we sharp enough? Good enough? Well, Wilmington has gone through a great deal of change since World War II, and there's a good deal of work that's needed to rebuild the part of Wilmington that surrounds its downtown. Historically, Wilmington was an east-west city. What you're looking at is a map that shows the areas below the Brandywine River with all of its transit connections going left to right. Everything in pink were just paper streets at this point in time at the turn of the century. And what we had was a great deal of contiguity, both with regard to transportation, but what you're looking at, that little rectangle there, that purple rectangle, is 4th and Market Street. And I think you can hear me if I step away from the mic. Is this clear enough? That there were no gaps in our city. You could walk for block after block after block. I'm sorry, sir?
You could walk for block after block without any break in the intensity of the mixture of residential, commercial, office use, professional services. This was a very whole city. And we went through a period of time where, as some of you may know, we ended up with the development, obviously, of the suburbs after World War II and the interstate system, which came through the heart of the city and separated what is now known as West Center City from what is the rest or balance of the west side of the city. We took out, that is between Adams and Jackson that you're looking at, and so we created sort of artificial communities. West Center City never existed as an entity. It was really just part of the west side. That's what we took down in the middle. That's Adams to your left and Jackson to your right. And then we also took out the other side of downtown. So we separated the east side from downtown, and we took out, within less than 7.5 years, we took out 81 blocks of our city. So we have a lot of repair work to do. And we also had a good deal of upheaval. So this is 2 days after Martin Luther King was killed. This was a rally in Rodney Square. And we also had a bit of upheaval, and as you're aware, we also had an occupation for a year. These really have taken its toll on the downtown. So what we have in front of us is an emerging pattern of reanalysis of how we develop the city. And the yellow area is what we're beginning to see in the emerging framework for developing Wilmington as downtown. It's a much larger definition than the traditional central business district. And so it goes from 95 all the way through the east side. And when the opportunity came to respond to the governor's initiative regarding the DDD, we worked hard to take the cooperative efforts that are underway, the planning efforts that are underway, and to study them and integrate them into a redefinition to try to take what is to the right of 95 and reunify it through West Center City, using planning work that's been done in recent years, some of it with Wells Fargo money, some of it with other investments, to reattach, if you will, the areas of the city that flank Market Street. We had fountains in the city. We're looking at the value of these amenities. We have street lighting, which was much more effective in the past. We need to bring that back so we have a walkable city. And we also have examples of where there are downtown neighborhoods that are close to downtown that are quite attractive. And what we want to do is build on the history of the attractiveness of the neighborhoods that were linked to downtown but that have been severed and reattach them. So we're focused on a district that stretches from 95 through West Center City across the downtown to the east. And this is the shape of the downtown development district. It's linear. It was a difficult task to convey during this process. We worked very closely internally with the Department of Real Estate and Housing, Director Gilliam, myself. We worked with many different representatives from housing, nonprofit housing agencies and planners that had been involved in these areas. The East Side Rising, the West Center City Futures, the Creative District, WRC, et cetera, Downtown Visions. And we brought together a district that, by definition, had to be connected. So we couldn't just skip over the governmental complex that we're in today. So technically, this building's in the DDD, although we don't expect the state to be applying for any money. But we had to connect. So this is a 223-acre district that brings that the objective is to reconnect neighborhoods to the downtown on both sides. So whether it's housing stock, open space, urban agricultural activities, markets. Also looking at ways to improve pedestrian mobility through the city so we're not such an automobile-dominated downtown. That's an important part. If they can do this in New York, we can do this here. We're looking at street furniture and activities that are upscale and introducing people to a more walkable city. This happens to be a newsstand. So generally, we're trying to connect everything, as you can see, from the left through West Center City, across downtown, into the east side, and build back the relationships that used to exist. And bring back a much more active and vibrant city. So, thank you. I want to touch briefly on incentives. I think it's very important to note although the director of our Office of Economic Development is unable to be here today, Jeff Flynn, Anjali Sharma and I and John Kurth, who's here from the Planning Department, put together a small set of pages from the actual application which focus on incentives. And I'll touch on two of them briefly, but if you have very specific questions, what we really would like to do is invite you to, Anjali, sign up with Anjali and set up a time in the very near future, in the next week or a week and a half, to come in, describe what you're interested in, and we can customize how these given incentives that we've identified could work with your projects. I would touch on two just as a final note. One is that we want to expedite the permitting process. So we are going to be reviewing we're going to conduct preliminary reviews for projects within the DDD. That means we'll bring together department officials, all the players involved, and give you a preliminary review of the parameters around your project within 72 hours. And then we're looking at permitting within 45 days. And secondly, I think just one I want to mention is for smaller projects that often need a bit of architectural or engineering services to get them to the point that you can accurately understand your costs. We are going to look at providing, I believe, up to 20% of those costs. There is a ceiling to that. So that you can actually move forward with the development of the idea, understand how to communicate with those financial agencies or entities that would be funding your project in addition to the DDD application, and as a reimbursable, that is, and then be able to communicate with the city what your intentions are through plans or illustrations or more specific drawings.
Okay, I'm Karen Horton from the Delaware State Housing Authority, and what I'm going to talk about is the DDD grant program. Lenny provided an overview of the Wilmington DDD and how the city came to identify those specific boundaries. And as Anas and Cleon had alluded to, there is a menu of incentives that are available to investors in these areas. And the one that I'm going to talk about is the DDD grant program. So when DSHA was developing this grant program, what we did is we incorporated concerns that we were hearing throughout the legislative process as well as the public outreach process in the fall. And a lot of what we were hearing is that we wanted to see both small and large projects. We wanted to see those transformational projects, but we also wanted to provide opportunities for the small mom and pops, that wanted to have access. And that we wanted to make sure that investors in all districts throughout Delaware had access to the funds and that they could be used readily, easily with other incentives and resources such as the state and federal historic tax credits. So what exactly is the DDD grant? What it is that it's available to anybody who invests qualified real property investments within the boundaries of a DDD, and that it conforms with the DDD plan. Lenny had mentioned the plan that Wilmington had put together for, and that they actually looked at several plans to pull together the strategies and objectives shaping their plan. A broad range of projects can be done with the DDD grant program. They can be commercial, industrial, residential, mixed use. Also, that there is a minimum qualified investment threshold of $25,000 that first must be met before you can get that 20% back. Think of that $25,000 as a deductible. Once you hit that $25,000 deductible, your qualified real property investments over that amount will come back to you as a grant, 20% of it over that deductible. And also, again, it must conform with the DDD. This grant is available to virtually anyone. You can be a for-profit developer, a nonprofit. You can be a homeowner, a small business owner, property owner. It's really virtually open to everyone. The only entity that is not able to apply for this grant are government entities. Now, if this question has come up a lot, and that is that if you co-own a building, or if you own a building and you have a tenant who's interested in doing work within the building, or you're a tenant and you're interested in doing major rehab within the building, it's important that you coordinate with these other partners, and I'll explain why in a little bit. But We have forms on our website, and our website is on the brochure. It's also on the end of the slide. And on our, Penny and I also want to just mention Penny Pearson from our office is also here, and she's in the development section. And she's also here to help answer questions as well. But there's these forms that are on our website, and they're just one-page forms, but they make sure that everybody is aware of who is doing what to a building. Okay, so what exactly are the eligible expenses? The qualified real property investments for the purposes of this program are your capital costs that have been incurred after the date of designation that are necessary for the expansion, rehabilitation, or new construction of a building. And so these are your hard costs, essentially, and the examples would include exterior, interior, mechanical, electrical, excavations. You can do demolition, but at the end of the day, you have to have a building in its spot. And also, any utilities, once it is within the building, your electrical and things like that, plumbing, they're all covered. Now, because we do have a strong fiduciary responsibility for state funds, and we know that there are some activities that just do not contribute to community revitalization, that we do have some ineligible activities and expenses. Adult entertainment establishments, as identified in Delaware 24 Delaware Code. Check cashing facilities, liquor stores, pawn or gun shops, tattoo parlors. Restaurants, businesses can sell alcohol as long as food is also sold. Another thing that is an ineligible expense are your soft costs, such as site acquisition, architectural and engineering fees, impact fees, furnishings, permit zoning fees, utilities, utility hookups, well, septic, sewer. And we've had a lot of questions about this, and this is the best way to explain it. Utilities that run underground from adjacent parcels to the building are not covered. Once they connect to that building, from that point on, they are covered for the DDD grant. So if that makes sense. Okay, back to the beginning of the presentation when I mentioned we wanted to encourage a diversity of projects. We have two set-asides. We have a small project set-aside, and this is really to provide a streamlined and simplified process for your smaller investors that may only access this program once or twice. And these are for those investors whose qualified real property investments do not exceed $250,000 per building or facility. And you submit your application any time of the year after the project is complete. The large project set aside, this money is allocated through a reservation process prior to beginning the project. And this assures investors that their projects will be funded once it's successfully completed. Now for the small project set aside, to expand on it just a little bit. It's $1 million is what we set aside for it. And the process, again, is very straightforward. All you have to do is make sure that the project you're pursuing is located within a DDD, that it's in conformance with the district plan, and then what you do is you keep track of your invoices, your proof of payment, all of those expenses that occurred after the date of designation. And then once you're completed with that and the building has been placed in service, what you do is you have 45 days to submit a very simple application online. Again, it's available on our website. And what we'll do is we will confirm that the information is accurate and that the expenses that are submitted reflects the work that was done. And then what we'll do is we'll distribute funds, that grant fund, within 60 days. Now, we've also had some investors that say, well, I don't know if my qualified real property investments are going to exceed $250,000. Will that disqualify me? It will not disqualify you. You can go ahead if your expenses exceed that $250,000 mark. It's just that we're going to only look at $250,000 of that of those expenses, because the maximum a grant that you can receive under this set aside is $50,000. So, placed in service, what are we talking about when we say that? What that is, it's the date of your either final approved certificate of occupancy, whenever that is provided, or the date the final approved building inspection is issued. But regardless, DSHA will work closely with the City of Wilmington to make sure that it's the appropriate placed in service documentation required for that particular project. So for example, if you should have gotten a CO, but you just submitted a building inspection instead, and we find out that you need to submit a CO, we're not going to accept that application until it's been fixed and the City of Wilmington's okay with it. Just to give an example, here an investor spends $300,000 to expand an existing commercial building. $230,000 of the investment is chargeable to a capital account. So here we have $230,000. You take away that $25,000 deductible, and so what is remaining is $205,000 left for your grant. And so you take 20% of that, and what you would get back is $41,000 as your DDD grant. We also have a large project set aside, and what we did is we put the remaining amount, and that's $5,650,000 in this set aside. And what we did is, the reason why we did that is we wanted to really promote those transformational projects, those very large projects that really provide that big community impact. And so for what we did is for the first, I guess you could say, $2.5 million, you will get a rebate over that deductible, that threshold of 20%. And so that would be the calculation rate. Now, to really promote those very large projects, what we did is we provide an additional $500,000 in grant money the investor can access. However, after that $2.5 million, it's calculated at a lower rate. And we have a sliding scale in our program manual, which is on our website, where it shows for each amount where do you fall and what would be your grant amount. But here you can see that if you invested $20 million, you would get a grant back of $1 million. So it gets calculated at a lower rate. Now it's important to note that the grant limit per building or facility is $1 million over a 5-year consecutive time period per building or facility. It's not per investor. So if an investor is doing good work and they've fixed up this building or newly constructed a building and it was amazing, they can go ahead and move on, and they're like, wow, this is really great, I'm doing good work in the City of Wilmington. They can move on to another parcel, another project. It's not limited to the investor, because why would we want to penalize investors who are doing great work and really helping to revitalize Wilmington? So it's per building or facility, and that's why it's so important to coordinate. When I talked about earlier, coordinating with co-owners, or if you're a tenant, coordinating with your landlord, because there is that $1 million maximum over a 5-year period. You want to make sure that everybody is aware of who has gotten how much of that grant to date, if that's making sense. Okay, so applications, except for this first year, are going to be accepted once a year. And as Anas mentioned, that we're going to be having an application deadline for our large project reservations March 20th. It's coming up in a couple weeks. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to have another one in the fall, hopefully after a new appropriation is given for the next year, and we're looking at late summer for that to happen. And then moving forward, we'll be having a reservation application process in the fall after the General Assembly appropriation every year. So we'll find out how much is allocated, and then we're going to have a reservation process. So with that reservation process, all projects, they really only have to meet 3 threshold criteria for consideration. That is confirmation that your project's within the DDD, demonstration that it conforms with the district plan, and you have to show that you are ready to begin and finish the project within 3 years. If you're able to do that, then you will get that reservation, as long as funding is available. Now, if there are more reservation applications that exceed more than the funding that's allocated, then what we've done is, in these situations, and only in these situations, then what we'll do is that we'll give special consideration to applications that address one or more of the following priorities. For example, if the city, and this is the same for City of Dover and City of Seaford, that if there is a project or two or several that they see as critical to being able to turn their community around, and they have identified it as a key priority project in their district plan, it is highly likely that in the event that the reservations exceed the money allocated for it, that they're going to get that reservation. Also, if your reservation application creates permanent jobs, then they're going to we have a point system. And it's very straightforward, these criteria. We wanted to make it so it was easy to go yes or no when we were looking at these. And they are on Appendix A of our program manual, which is on our website. If you go to destatehousing.com, we have many ways to get to our district grant program website, but on there, one of the items is the program grant manual, and in the very end of it is Appendix A, and it talks about how many points are allocated to each of these priority considerations, and what are we talking about when we say you create permanent jobs, and what does it mean to provide mixed-use development. So with the large projects set aside, what's going to happen is if you receive a reservation, it's going to talk about, let me back up. You're going to get a reservation agreement, and it's going to talk about, we agree to provide you X amount of money based on this scope of project that you have described and said you're going to pursue. And it's going to come with conditions. One, that you have to have, proceeded at least 15% of the way through in the first year of hard costs. Like if a year goes by and you haven't even broken ground yet, we've got to give that reservation to somebody else. Also, that you have to finish it within 3 years. And that it cannot change, the nature of the project cannot change from what you submitted to us for reservation. So you go ahead, you get that reservation agreement, you proceed with your project, and then once you're done, what you do is you have, and this is where it's a little bit different than the small projects set aside, you have an independent CPA attest to these investments, saying that they are accurate and true, and they correctly reflect the work that was done and the costs associated with them. And once we get that application and that CPA attestation, we will conduct a compliance review of the final project, including site visit, to make sure that the project conforms to the project scope outlined in the reservation agreement, and then you'll get your grant funds within 60 days. It's important to note that if it turns out that your expenses associated with it came in less at the end of the day than what was outlined in the reservation agreement, you're going to get that actual cost. You're not going to get that reservation agreement. And at the same time, if your expenses exceed what was outlined in the reservation agreement, you're still going to get what was in that reservation agreement, because we have all these funds allocated to everybody, and we want to make sure that when they come in, that they're able to get that money. So 2 examples here real quick. First one is a rehabilitation, $600,000. There was a $25,000 deductible. What's left over to be grant eligible is $575,000. 20% of that is $115,000. A new construction example is, say, $10 million. This is where we move into that sliding scale, okay? So you take away that $25,000 deductible, and then you're left with $9,975,000, which is eligible for a grant. And this is where we look at the sliding scale, which is on our website and our program manual. And if you look at the large project application, we have that sliding scale there as well. And what they would get in return is $700,000 back as a grant, which is still a substantial grant. So here is our website that has all of our information. Also, in your brochures, you have our cards for both myself and Penny Pearson. If you have any questions, she is really the more technical person to ask. We also, if you want to send an email to this ddd@destatehousing.com, we're able to answer questions. There's several of us, including Penny and I, that both monitor that email account.
My name is Joan Larrabee. I'm with the Delaware Division of Historical and Cultural Affairs. And I am talking today about federal and state historic preservation tax credits. So this is a little different from the grants that Karen was talking about, but is a kind of add-on incentive in these downtown development districts. However, I will tell you that the tax credits, these are not new. This is not a new program. These tax credits have been available for some time. And their purpose is to encourage the preservation of historic buildings, and we'll talk in a minute about what those are defined as in this case, and to promote and reward when there is private investment in rehabilitation of these buildings. Obviously, to help promote reinvestment in existing communities versus new construction. We want to invest in these buildings that are existing in cities like Wilmington and Dover and places which have these new downtown development districts. And when the legislation was passed to create the downtown development districts, they actually set aside a certain portion of the tax credits, the state tax credits, to be channeled into these areas. So the benefit of this program is that this is a tax program. It's tied to tax code. It offers a tax credit equal to a percentage of your rehabilitation costs for a certified rehabilitation of a certified historic property. And the percentages are similar, but there's some more. The state has more incentives than the federal. The federal program has been available to properties since 1976, so it's been available for quite some time. It is only for properties that are depreciable or held for income. And there is a 20% tax credit that is given against your federal income tax liability if you rehabilitate a property that's, as I said, a certified rehabilitation of a certified historic property. There is a 10% credit that is also available for non-residential buildings built before 1936. And these credits do not have any limits. They are, whatever comes in does get awarded if the applications are approved. But there are lots of links to the IRS code since this is a federal program. I'm going to do very kind of broad brush here. I'm not going into lots of specifics on them, but I'm happy to answer questions both generally and more specifically on your individual projects. The state credits are tied to Delaware income tax liability and franchise tax liability. And franchise tax is usually paid by banks, and I'll explain why that comes into play. If you have an income-producing property, depreciable property, there is a 20% tax credit. If you are an owner of your home, your own residence, owner-occupied, then it's 30%. And since we know we don't get very many benefits for doing rehabilitation on our own homes, this is a nice benefit. The Delaware credits, unlike the federal ones, do have a cap. $5 million per year is what I am able to allocate out to these projects. And the downtown development district projects are specifically allotted 1.5 million of that. It is a tax credit. Both of these are. They're not a deduction, so they are off your bottom line of your tax liability. And one of the interesting things about the Delaware program, is that it is transferable. And what this means is that you can sell them immediately to anybody else. So the person that they are sold to does not have to have any connection to this project. Unlike the federal credits, which the person doing the rehabilitation and taking these tax credits has to hold the building for 5 years, with the state credits, you can be awarded them and immediately turn around to sell them to anyone who has Delaware income tax liability, and this is where the banks come in, because you can sell them to banks who are, by their charters, supposed to reinvest in their communities. They will purchase these at a discount and apply them against their franchise tax liability. And one of the other benefits of the saleability of these tax credits is that nonprofits can take advantage of this, because of course they don't have any income tax liability, and they can rehabilitate their buildings and then sell the tax credits. So to be a certified historic property, that's the first criteria that you must meet if you're going to apply for these. And that means that the building must be either individually listed in the National Register of Historic Places or located in a National Register listed historic district and certified as contributing to that district. So these districts, which are made up of lots of buildings, there are certain criteria under which they're listed. Your 1860 house might be a contributing building, but the gas station built in 1979 is not. So the gas station would not be eligible, the house would be. I mentioned that you must hold the property for 5 years if you're in the federal program. So I put up a map that shows Wilmington. I haven't superimposed the downtown development district, but it broadly goes through this general area. And so there are numbers of historic districts, which are the ones that are in shaded in red, that are within the downtown development district, and there are individual properties, lots of them along Market Street, Upper Market Street. There's 2 districts in Lower Market Street, but the Upper Market Street area has a number of individually listed buildings. And we've seen a lot of, over the years, since this program has been around in Delaware, which has been since 2001, the most activity we've had has been in Wilmington. The most applications we've seen have really been for commercial buildings, have been from Wilmington, and most of it really centered along the Market Street corridor. So then you must do, so you decide my building is certified, can be certified. I meet one of those criteria. Then you have to do certified rehabilitation. And what this means is that the rehabilitation that you're doing is consistent with the Secretary of Interior standards for rehabilitation. And if it's a federal application, the expenditures must be qualified and meet the IRS definition of being substantial. If it's a state application, you also have to, and it's depreciable building, you have to meet that same criteria. But if you are a homeowner or a nonprofit, and therefore you don't have, those things wouldn't apply, there are some minimums that you must meet. So the standards for rehabilitation are 10 broad common sense principles. There are copies of those standards in your packet. I'm not going to go through them. They are on a green piece of paper that you have in your packet. in addition to these standards, the National Park Service has created guidelines and lots of other kinds of information to assist you in carrying out rehabilitation work that would be consistent with the standards, and that is available on their website. The owners would be using these standards as they carry out the work, and we use them as well when we review the rehabilitation work, because we are actually literally reviewing the rehabilitation work on these projects, or the Park Services, if the National Park Service, if it's a federal project. Qualified expenditures are defined by the IRS. All costs associated with the actual construction would be eligible. The other costs that are not are sales and marketing, anything that's not properly charged to a capital account. Acquisition costs are not eligible to be included, or anything associated with the acquisition of the property. For the federal program, they don't allow landscaping, site work. The Delaware program does allow those costs, and the federal program does not allow any costs of any addition, but the Delaware program does allow those costs if the addition is small, and that is defined in our guidance. The IRS also says that personal property is not eligible to be included, and we also disallow those costs. The biggest of these that comes up a lot is appliances. Those are considered personal property. Things like draperies and rugs that you can roll up and take out. Anything that you can, that's really not attached to the building, would be considered a personal property and would not be able to be included. We do include, unlike the grants, we do allow some of those soft costs, architectural fees, permits, those kinds of costs that are not eligible for the grant program. When defining substantial rehabilitation, the IRS definition is tied to the basis of the building, which if you're holding a property for income, remember the federal program is only eligible for depreciable properties. When you purchase a depreciable property, you establish a basis, which is essentially your purchase price minus what the land is worth. If you've held it for some time, it becomes a little more complicated, but that's the dollar amount that you must spend on the rehabilitation. And it can meet or exceed that. You have to spend it within a 24-month period generally, although there is some cases where it can be extended to 60 months. The minimum is $5,000. If you've held a building for a really long time and you've depreciated your basis down to nothing, you have to spend at least $5,000. And so for owner-occupied properties, we've established the same bottom line. You must spend at least $5,000 to apply. There is an application process that for both federal and the state. There are separate processes. There is a three-part application for federal, 4 parts for the state, but they mirror each other. Part 1 talks about whether your building is certified. Is it within those National Register district or individually? If it's individually listed, you don't have to fill out that part. Part 2 talks about the rehabilitation itself, describing the rehabilitation in detail. You don't have to have drawings if you're not doing new additions or things like that. You can just describe it in words, and photographs, which are required. Part 3 is when the work is finished. So if you've submitted your before photographs with your Part 2 and you talk about your plan, you submit your after photos with your Part 3. The request for credit award is for the state only. We do require that the applicants submit the documentation of their expenses to us as part of that part of their application. For the federal application, those are not submitted. That would only be called into play if you were audited by the IRS. We haven't heard a lot of that happening. This program's been around for a long time, as I said, and it's not something they particularly target. So we review all federal and state applications in the State Division of Historical and Cultural Affairs, and those that are federal we pass on to the National Park Service for final approval. Just showing you some projects. As I said, the Market Street Corridor has been one of the most active, and here's a project, a very large project that was received both federal and state tax credits, the Queen Theater. It was over $35 million project. Here's another one in which the historic tax credits were combined with the low-income tax credits, which is through the State Housing Authority. And if that happens, you get an extra bump up on ours, an extra 10% on our program in the percentage that the credits are calculated at. And here's another one on Market Street that did receive both federal and state tax credits. And here's our contact information for people in my own contact, and Jesse Zanovich, who also does review. And in your packet you received, you have a yellow sheet that talks about the state credits and a blue one that talks about the federal, and contact information is on the bottom of those.
When we heard about the downtown program and grants, we wanted to get on board. We wanted to be supportive of the governor's initiative. So we actually developed a special program that is going to be geared towards small mixed-use buildings and the residences in the district. And Kerry's going to talk about that. And then I'm going to follow with some of our standard programs that I think may be of interest to the larger commercial projects and nonprofits in the district. But again, we are happy to be a part of this effort. We are looking forward to the City of Wilmington to help us market this program, so we hope that we'll be able to get information of our program in your website and on in your documents. So with that, I'm going to introduce Carrie Hollenbach. Carrie works for a company called ICF. They are working for us, and they run our home performance program. And again, he's going to talk about how we've modified the program for the residences here in the district.
The home performance program is actually a statewide program, so anybody in this room that lives in the state of Delaware can get one of these home energy audits done. And all you need to do is you actually have a piece of paper in your folder that's got this orange banner across the top. And all you need to do is write down my contact information on that and give me a call, and I would be happy to set you up so that you can get one of these done at your personal residence. And it's also rental properties fall under this program, as well as second homes. So if you have like a second home down at Rehoboth or something like that at the beach, that would also qualify. The big difference is that the statewide program offers a lot of the same benefits that the DDD program offers. The statewide program, the cost of an energy audit is $100. And the cost of getting an energy audit done inside one of the downtown development districts is only going to be $50. And I'll elaborate on that a little bit more as we move along. I'm not going to hit on this too much. Tony just talked about this. This program is sponsored by the Delaware Sustainable Energy Utility. Who can participate? This is going to be this is about the downtown development district. Residential buildings that have 1 to 4 units in the building within the downtown development districts of either Dover, Seaford, or Wilmington. There can also be a mixed-use building, and a good example of this might be a property where the bottom floor is a retail space, and above that is would be 1 to 4 residential apartments or something along those lines. So that would qualify under this program as well. Why would you want to participate in this program? The nice thing about the home performance program is that when you have an energy audit done, it doesn't focus on just one single thing on the property. It takes a look at everything from top to bottom, inside and out, to come up with a very comprehensive solution to improving the comfort inside the building as well as reducing the energy bills, what it costs to operate that structure. Why participate? As mentioned before, the energy audits are only $50 under this program in the downtown development district. So it's a $50 well spent, and you would see a very quick return on your investment. Again, this will give you cost-effective solutions going through this process to high energy bills and comfort issues. I would say statewide, we are seeing where we're averaging about a 20 to 30% energy savings on each one of these that we do. So it's a substantial energy savings that we're able to generate for the property owner. And I'm going to give you a little bit more detail here in a few minutes about the special rebates and the special financing that we have that are available for this program. The other thing that you get when you have one of these energy audits done is you get an assortment of things that are also installed at no additional cost at the time of the audit. And they would include up to 10 compact fluorescent light bulbs, 4 energy-saving faucet aerators, 2 energy-saving shower heads, 2 smart power strips, hot water heater pipe insulation. And think about that. I mean, that's about, we figure that the market value of all of that is somewhere in the 200 or more dollars. And that's something that in the downtown development district, you can get all that done for $50. So there is a very quick payback on that initial investment. The energy auditor is a BPI certified professional that comes in. He's a auditor that's been vetted and approved by the program. And he's going to be looking to find poorly insulated areas in the structure, looking for inefficient heating systems, inefficient cooling systems, inefficient hot water heating systems. He's going to be doing a blower door test on the property in most cases, and also doing an infrared scan of the property, looking for air leakages and drafts and sources of drafts throughout the structure. That same thing would apply to the duct system, the air distribution system inside the building. That will also, during the blower door test and infrared scan, we would be able to identify leakages. And of course, the more of these things that we identify, the better opportunity we have to take corrective action on those things. We're also going to be looking for ambient carbon monoxide and any other gas leaks, or things like that that may be in any other safety and health issues, and that would also include any indoor air quality problems that may be inside the structure as well. After the energy audit, the nice thing about this is the property owner or the homeowner receives a nice report from us, and it details the energy saving solutions that we've got or the recommended energy upgrades. And it will show you how, if you make these improvements in the property, that they pay for themselves over time. So it's a very good tool for you to have as a homeowner or property owner, because it lets you know that investing in a new piece of equipment, or investing in air sealing, or investing in air sealing or insulating the structure properly will actually pay for itself over time. It'll also include information on rebates and incentives that are available to you. And it will also, we've also have the 599 unsecured fixed rate financing for up to $15,000 for up to a 10-year period. As you can see here, and we have, this is a little bit of a correction to the form that you have in your folders. These incentives are actually 75% up to these levels that are on there. So you might want to make that correction on that. So we have, as you can see here, we have rebates for air sealing, duct sealing, attic insulation, knee wall insulation, crawl space insulation, floor insulation, rim joist insulation, wall insulation. We have rebates for heat pumps, central air conditioners, mini split systems, furnaces, boilers, heat pump, hot water heaters, and also tankless domestic hot water heaters. So there's rebates in here. If you have any, if any of these energy upgrades occur on your property as a result of going through and getting an energy audit done, then you would be rebate eligible for these rebates in this case. Here are the participation guidelines. To be eligible for rebates, all work, including the audit, must be completed by one of the Energized Delaware participating auditors or contractors. We have a web page. There are approximately 25 companies that have been approved in the state of Delaware now, in all 3 counties to do work under this program. There's also a qualification. There has to be a final checkout or a test out is required to verify that the equipment has been properly installed and that the property is safe to live in. There's a safety and health checkout that's done on each property improvement. And all work in the program is subject to the program quality control inspections. That's just a little extra benefit that everybody in the program can realize that we do have people that go out and QC the completed jobs. For projects that include commercial spaces, you may need to apply separately to the Energy Efficiency Investment Fund. So if we're looking at a mixed-use building, and Tony's going to elaborate a little bit more on this later, so I'll leave that for him to do. So how to get started? There's the web address. If you go to this web address, there's a link there where you can go in and put in your contact information, and we will contact you to set up one of the energy audits. You can also call me directly at that telephone number that was up there previously. We have an 877 number as well. And I would just encourage you to sign up today to get this done. Thank you.
Great. So just a couple last points about our organization. We have a number of other programs that we're doing, and I think some may be of interest in the district also. First off, there's a lot of nonprofit organizations in the district. It could be a church, community center, senior centers. We have a program for subsidized energy audits, not Carrie's program. Actually, we do it in conjunction with the University of Delaware. We will come out and do energy audits. We will use energy audits. We'll do the energy audits for them at a commercial industrial level. So it's significantly, and we're looking at large buildings, buildings with utilities bills of greater than $20,000 a year. You heard a lot about this great grant program that the state's doing. Perhaps part of the project you're doing involves energy efficiency measures, new controls, new windows, changing out LED lights, new HVAC systems, new air conditioning systems, all very costly stuff. My organization does do low-interest loans, generally from the 2 to 4% area, to private commercial entities to finance the energy portions of the work that you may be doing. So again, and we can go as high as $1 million. So just a few blocks from here, we did $1 million loan to an office building where they did all new controls. They changed out their lighting to energy efficiency, a whole new heating system and air conditioning system. So again, we'd like to partner as much as we can for those portions of your projects that's not getting picked up for a grant. You're going to have to finance that. We could be an alternative financing at lower rates than you will find commercially for the energy portions of the project.